Hi, hello, welcome, good morning, class is in session. So this is definitely something different than what I normally do. But I was digging through some of my old files looking for a project I did for college and found this old presentation about dynamic and procedural music in games. And I think it still really holds up. So I wanted to sort of clean it up and present it to y'all. Without further ado, this is games and dynamic slash procedural music. So, originally, this was a project for college, and as part of that, we had to find a scholarly paper to start our inspiration for research off of because, of course, it's a college, you gotta do the research. But I found this amazing article by Karen Collins called An Introduction to Procedural Music in Video Games, published in 2009. And basically, what the author does in this article is that she goes over a sort of very brief history of the last 20 or so years of music and sound design in video games with respect to especially procedural music methods, and sort of like speculates on where it could go in the future and like what's stopping us from doing more of it right now. So, to start, she obviously has to define her terms. Dynamic or procedural music, as defined in this article, is specifically music that responds to the player input or the game state, so that no two playthroughs ever sound exactly the same. A good modern example is Zelda Breath of the Wild, which we'll get into later. But to first quickly go over what is not dynamic or procedural music. It's not sort of games about music composition, so like, Mario Paint, MIDI sequencer thing. It's not online jam sessions, not like O2 Jam, not like Guitar Hero, stuff like that. And it's also not procedural rhythm games where sort of you put in a song and the game sort of changes its difficulty based on certain beats in the song. As much as I would love to talk about Vib Ribbon, that's a presentation for another day. So there's two main types of procedural music that the author goes over in this article. Those being transformational and generative. Transformational is sort of just adding and subtracting layers, changing the pitch and tempo, etc., etc. It's something that we're all probably very familiar with if you've ever played a Mario game in your life. You're going through Super Mario Bros. 1-1, it's upbeat, it's peppy, but all of a sudden, oh no, 100 seconds left. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. And meanwhile, generative is basically when the separate parts are created beforehand and put together on the fly based on a player's input. So we are going to look into one of each, both which the author, I believe, cites in her article, and are very, very interesting methods of doing each. So first, for generative. For generative, we have Otoki. It is a game published for the Famicom Disk System in 1987. It was designed by Toshio Iwai and published by ASCII. It is a side-scrolling shooter where the player's shots actually control the pitch of the notes that are played, and there are sort of different pickups throughout a level that would change the tone and key, basically the instrument you were playing with your buttons. And then for transformative, we have early iMuse engine games. So think like Monkey Island and stuff like that. LucasArts adventure games. They actually used MIDI to dynamically transpose and transition between different sort of area riffs, depending on like where you are in game, what you're doing, who you're talking to, stuff like that. I've got this playing in the background right now. Try and spot the transition here. Pretty cool, right? All right, so in 2009, there were a few issues as to why procedural audio wasn't really common. The main thing is that its use, obviously, it needs to be like meaningful. It's not something that you can just like it's not something you can half-heartedly do. You've got to go into it with like your full throat and everything. It primarily relied on MIDI to get any sort of like decent result that just didn't sound cheap. But also this was before we had MIDI 2.0, so at the time most MIDI instruments didn't sound like all that good. This was 2009. This was like around the time that the 7th generation of consoles was starting, and we were relying on like CD quality music. We didn't really have like the room for MIDI anymore. Without MIDI, it is very resource intensive, because you essentially have to load, multiple pieces of music as well as the code to dynamically transpose between all those pieces. And also, there just weren't a lot of composers that knew how to sort of leverage the medium of video games and leverage their own knowledge of composition to actually like get the job done. But the author sort of ends their article with like a very positive outlook on the whole thing. They predict that there will be a very increased use of procedural audio in the future. And boy, were they right. In 2011, we had Portal 2, which had an arpeggiating synth that would join in with the score whenever you reached a high speed, and it would also change its pitch whenever you got launched this way or that. In 2013, we had Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which had a main song for each boss fight that progressed through the song as you reached each phase. In 2019, we had Devil May Cry 5, which had a combat system that rated how stylish you were, and based on your stylish ranking, it would actually change the part of the song that was playing. In 2017, we had Nier Automata, which was basically the same thing as Monkey Island, where it changed the actual song based on your area, but on a much larger scale with a fully orchestrated score. And we had Ape Out. Oh my god, Ape Out. Okay, so trigger warning for blood. Here are 15 seconds of Ape Out. The opening 15 seconds. If you're a little squeamish, skip to this timestamp. Ape Out. Pretty cool, right? All right, so to sort of wrap this up with some deeper dives into modern examples, let's go back to Breath of the Wild. So there is this amazing video by Scruffy that breaks into the sound design of Breath of the Wild. I won't play it today because I want you to go watch that video. Go give Scruffy some attention. But basically, much like Monkey Island, there's these seamless transitions into town themes between their night and day versions that have these long transitions. The field theme actually wasn't really a settled score, but it just sort of randomly played little piano flourishes as you explored. Whenever there was sort of a point of interest that came into your camera, there would be this huger flourish, so on and so forth. And there was also this dynamic combat music system that actually reacted to how you fight, where different percussive sounds would join in whenever you landed a big hit. And then for another example, to sort of like wrap this whole thing up, we gotta talk about herds. Come on, we gotta talk about herds. I love Them's Fightin' Herds. So Them's Fightin' Herds, it's a fighting game based on ungulates, basically, animals with hooves. And one of the sort of selling points of Them's Fightin' Hurts, to the point where like the sort of hype buildup for it included this, is that it had a dynamic music system for its stages. Basically, there was a character variation for every stage theme that would play both during their intro, and it would play when the character was doing their combos. And as the combo grew longer, it would sort of like add effects onto the actual music that was playing. I have playing in the background a little mashup of a few of the characters from my favorite stage theme, Texas Stage. So yeah. So that's really all I've got for you. You know, this whole concept of like generative music kind of feels like pretty old hat, especially, you know, now as I speak these words in 2026. But it is very interesting to see like how novel of a concept it was back then, and to see like sort of how it's evolved over the years, how it's changed, how it's gotten even better and better. So thank you for watching, I guess. If you want to see more of this, let me know. I liked doing this. If you have like certain topics that you would like me to cover, let me know. So other than that, yeah, thanks for watching.